The next menu item on the envelope setup is the initial setup. NH3 is not active for sprayer applications, so we don't need to worry about that menu. So the last item that we come to is initial setup. It may be the last item on this page, but it is actually the first item that you will need to set up when doing a new configuration. So in order to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on initial setup. And we want to do the VCM setup before we do anything else. So when I come into this VCM setup, you're going to see a list of all the VCMs that are on the machine and plugged into the hub and being recognized by the hub. So you can see that on this we have 5 VCMs. And this is a lot like PinPoint 2 in that we have VCM 1 here. That's going to be plugged into CAN channel 1. Now, if VCM 1 is a left-facing VCM, in other words, the tube is on the left-hand side of the machine and the tail runs towards the center of the machine, I can use this swap ends down here. And you can see that it now reorients that VCM how it would be installed on the boom. So by swapping ends, we orient the VCM in the correct position. Now, many times on one of the CAN channels, you may have 2 VCMs plugged into a Y harness that come back to the hub. If I had 2 VCMs plugged into CAN channel 1, what I'm actually going to see in that situation is I'm going to have VCM 1A, and it's also going to show VCM 1B. So when I have 2 VCMs plugged into one CAN channel, I also have to get them in the right position. So if you have 2 VCMs on the same hub channel, you'll have another option over here that says swap positions. So again, if I had a 1A and a 1B, I would need to get my VCMs in the right order first. So I would use the swap positions to get them in the right order across the machine, left to right. And then I would want to get them in the right orientation second by hitting the swap ends button. So the VCM setup is greatly simplified from the PinPoint 2. We just have to hit swap position and swap ends until we get them in the right position. Then in order to verify that we got that correct, we would go out with our key fob. We would come out to our home screen on our system. We would make sure that our key fob was turned on. Then we would go to the back of the boom and we would key fob left to right across the back of the boom and make sure that we had all of the nozzles in the appropriate, that they fired left to right in the appropriate order. Then we verify that we have our VCM setup correct. Once we have our VCM setup correct, we can go into our initial configuration. In our initial configuration, our task control mode is going to be set to ISO. Our fluid control mode is going to be set to synchro, product mode single. Now, we have some options here that do change based off of your machine configuration. One of those is master switch source. So you have the options of none, external, or on screen. So external refers to there is a physical 12-volt on-off wire from that switch that's going into our hub to tell our hub with a 12-volt on-off that we are getting a master switch signal. We also have on-screen signals, which are signals that come across the virtual switch boxes on terminals. Typically, those are programmed as an on-screen switch box. And we also have those master switch sources that may be set to none, or they're coming across the bus and we don't have any of the virtual switch options or any of the physical switch options. And you're going to have the same thing with your boom switch sources. So with fields 4 and 5, we need to know where to go look for the master and boom switch sources on the ISO bus or that are physically plugged into our hub. So auxiliary input polarity, this is set to active high right now. This means that if you have a physical 12-volt on-off master switch plugged into our hub it's going to look for a high signal or a 12-volt signal to indicate that section status is on. If you have a ground switched master switch, you would set that to active low, and then we're going to look for that circuit to go low to indicate that the master switch has been triggered. Now, that active high and active low is only going to work if you have this set to external. So we have a VT update rate of 100 milliseconds. That's standard setting. Haven't seen any need to alter that. Display smoothing enabled. This smooths out the messages that are coming across the bus for a better and cleaner display. Nozzle spacing, in the situation of the C-Series in Australia, this is going to be set to 25 centimeters. So again, make sure that you've done your VCM setup and then come in here and do the configuration where you would change your nozzle spacing to 25 centimeters. Total number of nozzles is a field where when the PinPoint first initializes, it detects how many nozzles are plugged into that machine. In the case of the 120-foot, 10-inch, or 25-centimeter machine, that's going to be 143 nozzles. So when that PinPoint boots up, you should see this automatically populate that it found 143 nozzles on that machine. If it did not find 143 nozzles, you need to get your key fob out and figure out which nozzle isn't actually turning on, and then we'll basically do a factory reset to get it to redetect the number of nozzles until it has detected the correct number of nozzles that is actually physically installed on that machine. Once we have the total number of nozzles correct, then we can move to the next step, which is the maximum task control sections. So this tells the task controller how many possible sections that you want to subdivide this boom up into. If you've got 143 nozzles on your sprayer, we want to go on and set this maximum task control sections to 143 at least. And I usually just set it one or two above just for good practice. So 144 or 145 will say the maximum available sections that we could divide this boom into is equal to the total number of nozzles that is on the machine at the very least. So then your selected VT, if you have the ag control on there, you're going to see that this is ag control, and your task controller is going to be the ag control as well. So this is going to be what VT and task controller are you using with the PinPoint 3. Auxiliary boom config is not an active field right now. Software restart is a pretty handy little feature. So this allows you to basically reboot the PinPoint without having to power down the machine. So if you wanted to power cycle the PinPoint for any reason, so that could be that you've just done a software update and you need to software restart it to get the software to push in. So that software restart button right there powers the PinPoint down, then powers it right back up. So that software restart's very handy. And after you've done your configuration, you've done your VCM setup, and you've gone through and you've programmed in all of your other settings, including your soft booms, you have this ability here to save a machine configuration. So basically what you'll do is you'll hit this box, hit new config, come down here, click on this, and we can name this, I'm just going to name this configuration test, so, or T1 just for brevity. So now machine configuration T1. So now it has saved the profile that I've just generated and all the setup parameters as T1. So if I ever update softwares or need to reconfigure the machine or set it back to the way that I had it, I can come in here and select the machine configuration. If you have multiple ways that you want the machine configured, you can load in multiple machine configurations here as well. And the last line in this configuration is fill station. That's always going to be set to disable. You will not change that field. Even though you may have a fill station, you will leave that to disable.